Test of hypothesis concerning proportions. A test of hypothesis concerning proportions is used to determine if there is a significant difference between a sample proportion and a hypothesized population proportion, or to compare the proportions of two different groups. This type of analysis is particularly useful when dealing with categorical data, where responses are in categories rather than continuous measurements, such as yes or no responses. Steps in conducting a hypothesis test on proportions. 1. State the hypotheses, set up the null hypothesis, H0, and alternative hypothesis, H1. For instance, H0 might state that the population proportion is equal to a specific value, while H1 suggests that it differs. 2. Determine the significance level. Select a significance level, commonly 0.05, which represents the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually true. 3. Compute the test statistic. Use the z-test for proportions, which compares the sample proportion to the population proportion. 4. Determine the p-value or critical value. Use statistical tables or software to determine the p-value for the test statistic. 5. Draw a conclusion. Based on the p-value, decide whether to reject or not reject the null hypothesis. Example in educational management. Suppose a school administrator wants to test if the proportion of students who prefer online learning has significantly increased from the previous year's proportion of 40%. By conducting a test of hypothesis concerning proportions, the administrator can use sample data from a survey to determine if there is a statistically significant change in student preference. Analysis of enumeration of data. Analysis of enumeration of data refers to analyzing data that has been counted or categorized rather than measured. It often deals with categorical or nominal data where items are grouped into distinct categories. In educational research, this analysis is common when researchers count frequencies in each category, like the number of students in each grade level, or assess survey responses in terms of categories, such as yes/no answers. Applications in educational management. Student surveys, for example, analyzing how many students feel satisfied with their classes versus those who do not. Demographic analysis, examining the distribution of students across different socioeconomic or demographic categories. Using these methods in educational management provides valuable insights, helping administrators to make data-driven decisions on matters such as curriculum adjustments, resource allocation, or policy changes based on actual proportions and category frequencies. Advantages and disadvantages of test of hypothesis concerning proportions and analysis of enumeration of data. Test of hypothesis concerning proportions. Advantages. Simplicity. Proportion tests are straightforward, especially when analyzing binary outcomes, e.g., yes/no, pass/fail. Insightful in decision-making. Proportion tests are useful for making comparisons, such as determining if the proportion of students achieving certain scores or expressing certain preferences differs significantly over time or between groups. Applicability to categorical data. It's particularly valuable for categorical data, which is common in educational settings where data often comes in the form of preferences, performance categories, or survey responses. Disadvantages. Sample size requirements. Proportion tests require a sufficiently large sample size to ensure accuracy. Small samples can lead to unreliable conclusions. Limited to binary or categorical data. This test is limited to categorical data and cannot be used for continuous data or when assessing a range of values. Assumes random sampling. For accurate results, it assumes that samples are randomly selected, which can sometimes be challenging in educational settings. Analysis of enumeration of data. Advantages. Useful for descriptive statistics. Enumeration analysis provides a clear breakdown of frequencies within categories, making it useful for understanding distribution within a population. Accessible and easy to interpret, this analysis method is relatively straightforward and provides clear, count-based insights, ideal for demographic and categorical data analysis. Valuable for identifying patterns. it helps identify patterns or trends within data, which can be useful in making educational management decisions like curriculum planning or policy adjustments. Disadvantages: limited depth. Enumeration is mainly descriptive and does not provide insights into relationships between variables or causes behind observed frequencies. Less effective for small sample sizes. Small sample sizes may not represent the overall population, leading to biased or unreliable results. Inability to infer causation. This method does not establish causation, it only provides a count of occurrences within categories, so deeper analysis is necessary to determine underlying reasons. Application in educational management. In educational management, the test of hypothesis concerning proportions is helpful for testing hypotheses related to student performance, preferences, and demographic group comparisons. The analysis of enumeration of data is often used in analyzing survey data, attendance counts, and demographic distributions. Both methods allow school leaders and administrators to base decisions on quantitative data, supporting strategic planning, resource allocation, and evaluating program effectiveness, while acknowledging the limitations of each approach.